Hello, I'm Marisa Fernando, Head of Programs at Search Sri Lanka. Today we are joined by Radhika Hettiarachchi to talk about a project we implemented jointly. The Community Memorialization Project was an initiative by Search and Radhika, who is the founder of the Herstories Project. We aim to work with people's memories and experiences to build trust and reconciliation in Sri Lanka. The project collected life stories of individuals and communities affected by violent conflict in different ways and generated conversations built on sharing these stories with each other, within and between districts that cut across ethnic, political, and socio-economic divides. This project spanned across 3.5 years, from 2015 to 2018, with documenting and archiving, facilitated dialogue sessions, citizens exchange visits, small grants, intergenerational dialogue, and a traveling exhibition. Radhika, what would you say, or why would you say that memory is important?
Okay, so speaking of why memory is important, I think it's important to understand the context within which memory exists. History is often written by victors, and what that means is that it's always written through the prism of what is vested interest for them. It's complicated to talk about this, but simply put, it means that most victors will look for a single legitimizing narrative. The clearest example of this is the rush to commemorate after the war. It crystallizes memory in a way that is meant for us to remember our collective history a certain way. And if left uncontested, over generations, it might become the one single narrative. And so this is why memory is important, or rather people's memories are important in their multiplicity. Because countering these one single narratives means that we as citizens get to participate in co-creating our history. Secondly, it allows us as citizens not just to engage with these multiple histories, but to use those histories for conversations. Through the catharsis of storytelling, through the empathy of listening, it helps us to understand what we have each gone through. Our experiences are defined by who we are, our socioeconomic and our ethnopolitical realities. So this helps us to understand each other's realities, not just in terms of what happened to us, but also to understand what we need in the future in terms of what a just peace could look like.
The CAP project was implemented in many parts of Sri Lanka, cutting across the north, south and east, working with different partners, different communities. We worked also with young people and children on the concept of memory and how we should remember. Could you explain some of the learnings that we have from this project?
I think there are so many lessons that we learned from implementing this project, so it's very difficult to narrow it down, especially about the nature of memory, healing, and the value of storytelling. But one of the components of this project, which is a facilitated dialogue component, perhaps we can talk a little bit about some of the learnings from that. I think one of the learnings from that is related to how we should implement dialogue workshops. And I think for us, in our project, we started with homogeneous groups. And that was really important because when working with a homogeneous group and listening to each other and telling each other our stories, there isn't the proverbial other listening in on these conversations, which means we can be as honest and open about our experiences, especially painful experiences, and we can be honest and open about how we can move beyond these painful experiences towards a non-recurrence of violent conflict. And this kind of safe and open space that was created within members of our own communities, when I mean homogeneous, I mean ethnopolitically, ethno-religious, socioeconomically homogeneous, so essentially within one community, it allows that safe space to enable a deeper discussion. And then we can work with other communities that are not homogeneous because we've already dealt with our memories within one group of people before we move on. So that was a very important and key lesson that we learned in terms of dialogue process. And another one is that each of these sessions, the dialogue processes, were built on a certain methodology of being able to of being exposed to others' stories through the exhibition or in person, and sharing a sense of empathy with others by listening to each other's stories and listening to the specific needs that these experiences brought about in the post-war era, understanding the root causes of conflict and its impact on our community as well as other communities, and acknowledging the similarities and connections that we have with each other, especially the values that we retain as core principles in the way we engage with each other, and agreeing that this kind of value-based society will help us towards non-recurrence of violent conflict. And this helped us identify very simple ways in which communities can practice coexistence and peace in everyday life. And that methodology was validated in the way we engaged with communities, but also in the responses and the level of engagement that participants across the districts shared with us.
The CMP project was actually quite a unique project for Search Sri Lanka. It was also the first time that we had taken on the topic of memory and memorialization. So there was also, so in a way it has given a lot to Search Sri Lanka and how we have done our work going forward, especially as Radhika mentioned, this working with groups as homogeneous groups before jumping in and trying to do bringing groups across all the ethnic divides. So that has been something that we have been able to bring into the work, in all the work that we are doing in Search. And I think another very important aspect that came into Search's overall work as a result of the CMP work was this focus on values. I don't think that was such a strongly focused concept in our work. I mean, especially in peace building work also you tend to think root causes and going back and trying to see who did what and who is to blame. But this whole experience really taught us a lot about looking at values and working with values as a connecting factor, and that when you focused on that, it was easy to overcome the divides and look forward. Otherwise you tended to be stuck in the, I know memory is not about keeping you stuck in the past, but how we move forward to the future as well. So it really created a good experience and examples on working with values.